Yeah, I'll react to that, sure.
Be one of the most interesting men.
Hi guys. How are you? Good? Where are my manners? Oh, I'm waking up. Oh, it's good. Biographics, preemptive like. Original link to the video, top of the description. Below that, link to the Discord. Would love to have you. Makes it easier for me to it's all the things. Okay, guys? This is one of the more popular, it's like the top 8 popular, most viewed videos on biographics, which is a big channel. And I've definitely heard of it. It rings a bell, but I have no idea who he is.
Aleister Crowley may just be one of the most interesting men who ever lived. He was a self-proclaimed magician, scholar, writer, and even an undercover spy. He was known as the Great Beast 666 because some believe that he was the Antichrist written about in the Book of Revelation. Others believe that he was a genius and a visionary, and that the world would not be the same if it wasn't for his teachings. Well,
was he like a Rasputin type character?
today we're going to talk about the life of this legendary figure, and you yourself can decide if he truly was the wickedest man alive.
Okay. I'm ready. Yep.
In 1875, Aleister Crowley was born in Warwickshire, England, to two extremely religious parents. His grandfather had a successful distillery business, and yet his father never
Aleister Crowley is such a British sounding name, so I shouldn't be surprised.
Religious parents. His grandfather had a successful distillery business, and yet his father never wanted to spend any of the money because he believed drunkenness was a sin. He became a preacher instead and passionately evangelized the teachings of a fundamentalist Christian group called the Plymouth Brethren. They taught young Edward to live life as simply as possible, and that men, they only existed in order to serve God. Any form of excess, whether it was spending money, dressing in nice clothes, or eating more than was absolutely necessary, was considered a sin, and the temptation to indulge in anything was seen as the work of the devil. When he was very young, Edward looked up to his father and wanted to become a preacher just like him. He obeyed his parents' every demand, and instead of going outside to play with the other children, he instead studied the Bible. As you might imagine, this did not make him a very popular boy in school, and he was bullied mercilessly by the other children. His father, he died of tongue cancer when he was only 11, and he was left in the care of his overzealous mother. Living under such harsh conditions.
Oh no. Super religious parents, dad dies, overzealous mother, homeschooled, bullied as a kid. This is just red flags. It's like Ed Gein or serial killer. The guy, psycho. I'm not saying that you're going to be a serial killer, but you're definitely checking. Did he hurt animals too, like as a kid?
Conditions on a daily basis made Edward very sick. The doctors said that he was so under such harsh conditions on a daily basis made Edward very sick. The doctors said that he was so weak he would die within just a few months if no changes were made. Thankfully, his uncle stepped in and suggested that maybe the boy needed to live in the countryside. Edward moved in with his uncle and began mountain climbing and running through the forest where he breathed fresh air. His uncle allowed him to have fun, which was a concept that had been completely foreign to him up until that point. He even brought him to pubs and let him drink underage and paid for a prostitute so that he could lose his virginity at the age of 15. After all, the doctors said that he might die soon, so his uncle wanted him to experience as much fun as possible with the time he had left. His health, though, it fully recovered, and he was sent back to live with his mother. But Edward had changed in his time away, and he was now in full-blown teenage rebellion. He knew that the Plymouth Brethren were to blame for his sickly childhood, and he rejected all of their religious teachings. He no longer wanted to be a preacher, and he wanted the free will to make his own life choices. He hated the idea that nearly everything that made people happy was considered to be a sin. His mother was shocked that her obedient son had changed so much in his time away and said that he had become the beast from the Book of Revelation. After arguing with her, he decided that if he needed to commune with the devil in order to live his life according to his own rules, well, so be it. He would become the beast that his mother said he was. One of the first wicked things he did was have sex with the maid on his mother's bed just to spite her. When she found out, she
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
fired the maid immediately, and the poor girl's reputation was ruined to the point where she could no longer work. The maid was forced into prostitution, and Crowley claimed that she became Jack the Ripper's first victim. He even said that prostitution, and Crowley claimed that she became Jack the Ripper's first victim. He even said that he knew the Ripper personally and that he was an occultist. Later, he would write about his formative years. I was in the death struggle with self. God and Satan fought for my soul those...
I don't believe you. It could be true, but I doubt it.
I was in the death struggle with self. God and Satan fought for my soul those long 3 hours. God conquered. Now I have only one doubt left, which...
Sorry, I'm talking about the Jack the Ripper part. I'm saying I really doubt he knew him. It just sounds convenient.
Yes.
Okay.
I was in the death struggle with self. God and Satan fought for my soul those long 3 hours. God conquered. Now I have only one doubt left. Which of the twain was God?
Does twain mean two? Like, is he saying which of the two was God? So, like, he wasn't... What would you say? Twain. Why'd you have to say twain? Twain. Twain meaning. Which of the two? Okay. All right. Understood.
When Crowley graduated high school, he was sent away to Cambridge, where he introduced himself to his new classmates as Aleister Crowley. He joined the chess club and was able to win several competitions.
Nice grass, by the way, even though it's black and white. Very nice.
New classmates as Aleister Crowley. He joined the chess club and was able to win several competitions. In 1898, when Aleister was 22 years old, he fell in love with a fellow classmate, Herbert Jerome Pollitt. Very few people in the school knew that Herbert had an alter ego dressing in drag in private nightclubs as Diane de Rougy. Crowley wrote love poems about Herbert, and they are filled with anguish about his wish to be with him. Clearly, his bisexuality was even more motivation to reject Christianity. In the eyes of the church, his love for Herbert was considered to be an abomination. After graduating from university, Aleister inherited the Crowley family fortune, and he could finally do whatever he wanted. He began to hire female prostitutes nearly every day, and he bought books on the occult. He was writing dirty poetry and publishing them overseas under a pen name. When he was in his early 20s, he found out that he was not alone in his fascination with the occult and the possibility that magic could be real. He joined a group of aspiring wizards called the Order of the Golden Dawn, which had famous members like poet William Butler Yeats and Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula. They claimed that they had translated ancient Egyptian texts, old grimoires filled with ancient spells, and Jewish mysticism from the Kabbalah. They believed that they could perform real magic, communicate with angels, and get to know their inner soul. When he showed up to his first meeting of the Order of the Golden Dawn, Crowley was wearing a disguise and introduced himself as Count Vladimir Svarev. He was still afraid that his family would find out that he was dabbling in the occult, and he did not want to ruin his reputation. No one was convinced of
What about... Okay.
his costume that
Didn't you already tell your mom that? Okay.
Coles, and he did not want to ruin his reputation. No one was convinced of his costume, though, because he was a baby-faced youth wearing a false mustache and speaking in a terrible Russian accent. Later on in life, Aleister Crowley actually became a secret agent for the British government during World War I because he claimed that he had successfully infiltrated a secret society. Now, technically that's true, but the result of his spy career was probably more along the lines of the Pink Panther rather than James Bond. After he felt comfortable knowing that the Golden Dawn took privacy very seriously, Crowley admitted to his true identity. Unfortunately, it already started things off on the wrong foot, and some people in the group found it hard to trust him. Despite this initial deception, Crowley took their teachings very seriously, and he was able to quickly move on through the lessons. The Golden Dawn wanted its new members to be able to get in touch with their inner soul before they were taught real magic. This was accomplished through a lot of discussions of philosophy, yoga, meditation, and mantras. They would write down their dreams in daily journals and interpret what they meant about their inner selves. However, there were some spells that they performed on a daily basis because they truly believed that they could summon angels to their aid. The lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram goes like this. In the name of God, the God of Israel, may Michael be at my right hand, Gabriel at my left, Uriel before me, Raphael behind me, and above my head, the presence of God. Crowley believed so strongly in the supernatural that he claimed that these were the early stages of a magical journey which would get him in touch with his guardian angel. He openly talked about his desire to call upon demons and the ancient gods. He incorporated psychedelic drugs into his routines because he believed that it intensified his spiritual experiences. This was all genuinely concerning to the rest of the Golden Dawn. Many of them were teetotaling aristocrats who felt that his ideas were radical, if not downright terrifying. The members did not want Crowley to rise in the ranks of the society because he was clearly interested in black magic, and they believed that he would use his powers for evil. There was a strict rule that no one could pay one another to teach them magic, but he managed to convince one of the members to teach him higher levels of spells in exchange for free rent. In his books, Aleister Crowley casually mentions walking in on his roommate as he was levitating, as if this was totally normal among the members of the Golden Dawn. In 1899, when he was just 24 years old, Aleister Crowley bought a mansion on the shores of Loch Ness in Scotland called Boleskine House, just so he could perform a spell called the Abramelin Ceremony. However, nothing actually happened. He never saw any angels or demons, no matter how hard he tried. Apparently, he grew tired of doing this ritual every single day without seeing any results, so he wandered off to do something else. Rumors spread that since he failed to finish the ceremony, this unlocked the gates of hell. Years later, Jimmy Page, the lead guitarist of Led Zeppelin, purchased Crowley's home on Loch Ness. He claims that the house was truly haunted by Crowley's demons.
Sorry, I am a very boring person, all right? I don't believe in anything. Probably to an annoying point for a lot of people, to a point where it's just like, ugh, we get it. But in my opinion, all right, ghosts, I can't believe I even have to say this, ghosts, demons, religion, all of that stuff. I don't mind what you believe. Believe what you want. But I know that some people believe in stuff like this, and I don't get it. I don't understand. How is okay.
Aleister Crowley's first wife was a woman named Rose Edith Kelly. When they met, she was a young widow who was engaged to a man that her parents chose for her. Crowley convinced her to elope with him instead, after only knowing each other for just one day, so that he could prevent her from entering into this arranged marriage. They ran away on a spur-of-the-moment honeymoon to Egypt together. Crowley brought Rose into a dark cave and began reciting his spells. He was reading from a book called Gota, the Lexici of Solomon. The idea was that he would summon an Egyptian god, Horus. He went through his chant when Rose's head suddenly fell back. She claims that in that moment she had a vision and heard the voice of Horus. Crowley was frustrated with Rose, assuming that she was playing a prank on him. He had been studying the occult and attempting to summon demons and gods for years, and they never appeared to him in any vision.
It actually makes it a little more believable, not that I believe it, that he's like, wait, you're lying. Because if he wanted to just, I thought he was going to say, I thought it was going to be a classic, like, oh, it happened. You see what I mean? Like the fact that he thought that she was lying. All right, sorry.
And attempting to summon demons and gods for years, and they never appeared to him in any visions. He simply couldn't believe that it was possible for Rose to evoke Horus when she wasn't even trying. But she kept insisting that she truly did see something in the caves, and that the gods had been angry with him up until that point because of his arrogance. Still not believing her, Aleister took her to one of the museums and asked her to point out the god she saw. Rose walked right up to the correct image of Horus, exhibit number 666. After seeing this proof, they rushed back to their apartment in Cairo so that they could talk about the visions in private. Rose said that Horus had given her instructions on how to communicate with the spirits. She gave Aleister a spiritual ritual to perform. When he was done, he heard a whisper over his shoulder from
He's creative, huh?
The voice of his guardian angel, Iwas. The angel instructed him to write down lots of information over the course of 3 days, and he published this in a text called the Book of the Law. The most famous quote was, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." Basically, this means do whatever you want with your own life. Crowley was thrilled with this revelation, and when he returned to England, he told all of his friends in the Golden Dawn about the voices that he and Rose had heard in Egypt. Many were reluctant to believe him, and some were angry Crowley, believing that he had been tricked into actually communicating with a demon instead of a guardian angel. At this point, they were still refusing to allow Crowley to graduate to the next level of the secret society, so he visited the leader of the Paris chapter of the Golden Dawn, McGregor Mathis. He explained the situation back in London, and Mathis seemed to agree that Crowley deserved to enter the next level. When he returned to London with his certificate from Mathis in hand, the other members, they still wouldn't accept him. So he snuck into the clubhouse and he changed the locks. The next day, he laughed at the men as they failed to get inside. Not surprisingly, he was then officially kicked out of the Golden Dawn. A year later, in 1905, Aleister Crowley took a group of his friends climbing on Kanchenjunga, which is one of the largest and most treacherous mountains in the world. They got to 25,000 feet, but one of the men on the expedition, a photographer named
Jeez.
in the
25,000 feet.
world. They got to 25,000 feet, but one of the men on the expedition, a photographer named Jules Jacques Guillemot, was angry at how Crowley was treating everyone else on the crew, and he wanted to take over the expedition. The expedition was marred by arguments between Crowley and the others, who thought that he was reckless. They eventually mutinied against Crowley's control, with the other climbers heading back down the mountain as nightfall approached, despite Crowley's warnings that it was too dangerous. Subsequently, several porters were killed in an accident, something for which Crowley was widely blamed for in the mountaineering community. It was claimed that Crowley sat inside of his tent and tried to summon a demon. At that very moment, an avalanche came down the mountain. They screamed for help, but Crowley ignored them and he left them for dead. He later wrote that he had absolutely no sympathy for the unfortunate accident, even though many of the men miraculously survived.
How have I never heard of this guy? Or learned?
Aleister Crowley's marriage with Rose, it fell apart after the death of their first daughter when she was only 2 years old. Even though they had a second daughter together named Lola Zaza, it was clear that they were no longer in love, and Rose fell into a deep depression. They got a divorce in 1909 based on his own adultery, and just 2 years later he had to put her in an asylum for having neurological damage from her alcoholism. This tended to be a trend because most of the people who even attempted to have a personal relationship with Crowley ended up having their lives completely ruined.
So what was going on back then when, like, people were admitted so often to these places, like asylums and medical institutions? Like, were people just, like, more messed up from some stuff in the alcohol or something back then that actually made them go crazy? Or were people just throwing people in insane asylums who didn't really need to go into them? Or maybe a little of both?
It's sort of a chicken or egg scenario. Did his belief in the occult attract mentally unstable people into his life, or was his wickedness enough to drive people insane? Crowley was not very interested in being a father, so he left his daughter in the care of boarding schools and nannies. He started his own cult called Thelema, where he taught the Book of the Law like it was the Bible. He started a commune in a villa in Italy that he called the Abbey of Thelema. Everyone who lived there was encouraged to do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. They took drugs, they had orgies together, and children
there it is.
were running around the grounds naked. One of the rooms in the villa was called
Always orgies. Okay, guys, whenever it comes to cults, and cult is a hard word, and I want to call all religions kind of, see, cult is it's a strong word, okay? But whenever there are institutions where people have this unquestionable authority, or in a position that everyone around them deems as very trustworthy and righteous, like a priest or like whatever, like it doesn't. Priests in the Catholic Church abusing little boys is the most unsurprising thing ever. I bet you that is not just, whenever humans are humans, all right, and you can kind of I have a lot to say about this, and I just spurted out a bunch of stuff, and now you might get the wrong. It's crazy how every single cult or something has something sexual tied into it, either overtly sexual or more behind the scenes sexual, right? And it's because humans are animals, and sex drive is a huge thing. And when they get in positions of power and realize they can do stuff sexually without repercussion, they do it. And that's not surprising. And I don't know what my point is. All right.
Thelema. Everyone who lived there was encouraged to do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. They took drugs, they had orgies together, and children were running around the grounds naked. One of the rooms in the villa was called the Nightmare Room, where Crowley painted terrifying pictures on the walls. He encouraged his followers to take LSD and stare at the frightening images until they completely lost fear of anything. The neighbors were shocked, and even to this very day, the locals say that the place is haunted by a curse. Rumor has it that the rituals became more and more intense, to the point where they even participated in bestiality and animal sacrifice.
There it is. Sorry.
Others is haunted by a curse. Rumor has it that the rituals became
so obviously, curse everything too, but if a place was cursed, I might be a little afraid of it, not because I think it's cursed by some supernatural thing, but because there might be some unexplained thing in that area that is damaging and is real, that people are misinterpreting as a curse, and that might hurt you, right? And so
more and more intense, to the point where they even participated in bestiality and animal sacrifice.
Classic.
One of Aleister's lovers, a woman named Leah, had a nervous breakdown after this, and she went straight to the British press after she stated that one of the followers died after drinking the blood of a cat. The Italian authorities, they came in and forced the group out of the house and banned them from ever returning. The Abbey of Thelema is still abandoned to this very day, and as we said, people believe it's haunted. Aleister Crowley, he visited the United States to spread his message, and he inspired several people
he came over here
to practice the occult as well, including rocket scientist Jack Parsons and the founder of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard. He taught them how to perform sex magic, which was the belief that in the moment of orgasm, their intentions could be heard by the universe. Unfortunately for Crowley, all of the drugs and sex, they eventually caught up with him. He became a full-on heroin addict, and he lost a tremendous amount of weight. In the 1930s, a journalist labeled Aleister Crowley as a black magician. After years of running cults and buying properties all over the world, his inheritance had finally run dry. He was living alone in a boarding house, doing whatever he could to get his fix and stay alive. He decided to sue the journalist for libel, even though he had called himself a magician and the beast in his own books. He lost the case, of course, and he had to endure public humiliation. Many people never saw him in London again, so they spread a rumor that he had died from a drug overdose, all alone in his boarding house. They felt that this would be a fitting end to such a wicked man, but in reality, fate gave him a second chance at life. A young woman named Deirdre McClellan approached Aleister Crowley after the trial was over. She said that she had read all of his books and was a huge fan, and she wanted to have a child. Now, this level of admiration, pretty much creepy enough for most celebrities to run in the opposite direction, but Aleister Crowley, he was so desperate that he agreed to go home with a stranger. McClellan helped him get clean from drugs, and she stayed with him through the worst of his withdrawal. After he was healthy again, they had a son together who was named Aleister Ataturk Crowley. Little Aleister was Crowley's pride and joy, and he felt a lot of regret for the way that he'd acted in his younger years. After living his entire life trying to prove that people should be as selfish as they could possibly be, he finally realized that true happiness and fulfillment, they came from family. They lived in a house in Cornwall where they spent their summers on the beach. According to Deirdre McClellan, Aleister Crowley slipped into a coma just before he died. The sky lit up in a cacophony of thunder as the gods came to reclaim his soul. He died in 1947 at 72 years old. In reality, he died of chronic bronchitis aggravated by pleurisy and myocardial
devils. Demons.
Generation. His funeral was held at Brighton Crematorium, and about a dozen people attended, and Lewis Wilkinson read excerpts from the Gnostic Mass, the Book of the Law, and Hymn to Pan. The funeral generated controversy and was labeled a black mass by the tabloids. Years after his death, artists and musicians from all over the world started to read Aleister Crowley's work, and it inspired them to live their lives in the way that they wanted. Hippies based their free love movement on his writings, and even John Lennon considered him to be a hero, putting him on the cover of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club.
Edgar Allan Poe. Is that what's his name? Bob Dylan? Is that the bear? Karl Marx? What's her name? Monroe?
His motto of "Do What Thou Wilt" was inscribed on the vinyl of Led Zeppelin's album, Led Zeppelin 3. David Bowie made reference to Crowley in the lyrics of his song Quicksand. His life was filled with outrageous claims, and without his attempts to shake up proper Victorian society, the world we live in today just may not have been the same without Aleister Crowley. So I sure hope you found that video interesting. Bit of a bizarre one, I know. If you did like it, give us a thumbs up. Also, subscribe. We've got other videos just like this. I think we're doing 3 or 4 a week now. So if you subscribe, you'll get all of those. Hit that notification bell so you do actually find out about them. If you're looking for something else to watch right now, though, I've got another channel called Highlight History. You'll find a link to that below. And as always, thank you for watching.
He has so many channels. Interesting. He has so many channels and great channels. Warcraft, a lot of them. Really interesting video. Hope I wasn't too annoying with my anti-cult talk or religion. I hope you guys are all doing well. I'd appreciate any comments. If anything I said was just wrong, let me know and answer any of my questions. I hope you guys are doing well, and I'll see you next video. Bye, guys.